All right, there we go. I think we're probably live. Just give me a second to let the laptop catch up. Um, so aliens, you guys. This is a subject that I have more experience with than I would even really like to talk about. Um, but the reason for the stream tonight is that I was online the other day and I saw some government official, Space Force director or chief, warning Congress that they've changed the name of UFO, I guess, to make it more palatable to people or something. But now they're calling them unidentified aerial or unexplained aerial phenomena or something along those lines. Um, Pretty sure they still mean UFOs. And so, looking at the reports, one of them said out of 144 events, nearly all of them were unexplainable, and that at least 18 of them employed the craft seemed to employ technology that no government on Earth should have. So, I mean, we're really, what's going on, Mr. Charles? We're really at a point where I think the governments have, I mean, they basically have come right out and said, we are at the mercy of some kind of intelligence of non-earthly origin. And as far as I can tell, almost no one cares. There's very little evidence that people are responding to this that I can find, and I I almost don't know what to say about it. I'm honestly confused. I mean, after the last few years, I feel like I've become more aware of the psychology of normies, for lack of a better word, and the tendency of people to stick their heads to ostrich, to stick their heads in the sand when there are things that they just can't deal with. But I'm actually surprised at the ostriching that people are doing. Um, but experiences that I had maybe 10 years ago or longer now, with contacts and some Native American spiritual leaders that came to New Mexico with a message about the Star Tribes. And the reason that I'm doing it, and I have talked about it on this channel before, but the reason I'm doing it now is that the overall circumstances that we are living through are consistent with what I was told by these apparent aliens and these Native American tribal and spiritual elders about the intervention that would happen on the part of the Star Tribes, and the circumstances that was surrounded. I mean, it's all happening, and there's every indication now at this point in my life that I should have faith and accept that what happened to me and my friends back then in 2011 was legitimate, that it was real, and we're we're about to see some shit go down. But before I get into those stories, I want to tell you guys about something that happened today that was super cool in the jungle here in Ecuador. If you don't know what a tapir is, it's sort of like this jungle alien. It's a sort of pig elephant affair, and they're very, very gentle creatures. They have a reputation for being tame almost, even when they're wild. Capybara is another very, very large rodent-like creature here in South America that is friendly like that. But we went to this island where there's a big troop of spider monkeys, and there's also tapirs. I think it's called Tapir Island, Isla Tapir or something in Tena on the Napo River. And so we walked out onto the island, and first we encountered the spider monkeys. There's some great pictures in the community that I posted of the spider monkeys, and this tapir. I said out loud to everyone, I hope we see a tapir today. And no sooner had the words escaped my lips this tapir comes out of the brush and walks right up to us. Um, and so we have a person attending our retreats here, and it just walked right up to him, and he stuck his hand out, and it kind of chewed on his hand a little bit. And anyways, there's pictures in the community, subscriber, whatever it is, where I post stuff on YouTube. So check those pictures out and come see us if you want. We do still have a couple of openings for our retreats, but we only have a few rooms. So if you're serious about coming, you should hurry up and make your deposit. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. So tell you about the pig elephants. Well, they're tapirs, and they you can see a picture that I posted if you are a subscriber. And they sort of have a very short elephant-like snout. I'm pretty sure they're actually pachyderms. It's kind of like a miniature pig elephant. I don't know what else to say about it. It was very gentle and very tame. It was a wild animal, but it followed us around. Yeah, how's it going, Ryan? Yeah, I know I've been very, very busy with the retreats and stuff. But here I am. Thank you guys so much for your support. Also, I want to thank Brad Gosser, Sunny Diesel, and Oracle Echo Weird for becoming patrons. We really do appreciate your support because we're demonetized. And if you don't support us, then we get nothing for our efforts. No, I don't think that humans have been enslaved by aliens at some point because I don't think we ever would have been unenslaved. I guess we could actually start this live stream out by talking about some of the things that people believe about aliens that I think are completely insane. And one of those ideas is that they are here to get gold. The reason I think that this is totally baseless is actually layered. For one thing, gold is a really heavy element. And in order to take enough of it for it to be meaningful, you would have to really fill up some ships with some really heavy stuff. And you could talk about maybe anti-gravitational technology. There's all sorts of mental gymnastics you can do to make a really bad idea seem viable. But maybe 15 years ago or so, scientists announced that they had figured out how to transmute lead into gold in the laboratory. And when I was growing up, we were told in school that that was completely ridiculous, that alchemists used to believe that you could turn lead into gold, and then they determined that you actually can do that. And so my point is, if there are civilizations that are 1,000, 10,000, even 100 years more advanced than us, if you look at how technology advances exponentially quickly, it's certain that if we have the technology, then they do as well to turn lead into gold, and they have no reason to come here to get gold and bring it all the way to some other star system on the other side of the universe or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just completely silly. And as we'll see, I have a lot of issues with a lot of the ideas about ETs because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. And we'll get there. But so let me tell you my story a little bit because it kind of seems like what we were told was going to happen is happening, and that's very interesting. So back in 2011, my roommate got an email. I don't know how exactly this all transpired, but there's a guy named Golden Light Eagle who is a Sioux Sundance chief. And if you don't know what Sundances are, you should. The Sioux will place hooks through their chest and dance in a circle with ropes connected to a pole in the sun, typically for I think 72 hours with no water. It's definitely can kill you, but in the absence of psychedelic plants, people do what they got to do to get into altered states and bring down those filters in our consciousness and our nervous system so that they can experience the universal mind and elevate their consciousness. And so Golden Light Eagle would lead these sun dances. And so this was an invitation from Golden Light Eagle to come to New Mexico, to Farmington, New Mexico, which is always been a hot spot for supposed UFO activity, and meet with representatives from many different tribes from both North and South America. There were people that were not affiliated with any tribe also speaking there. Um, but it there was a lot more to it than just talking. There were some ceremonies that took place that really pushed the envelope in terms of um, well, for example, when we pulled up in the parking lot and I got out of the car, I locked eyes with this guy and I felt this sort of charge, like an energetic charge, pass between us. And he exchanged that, he looked at me just like I was looking at him, and he said, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 40,000 years. Come on, we got to get to the ritual." And I was like, "What ritual?" And he grabs me by the arm and takes me around to the back of this hotel where this meeting was happening. And there's this guy. His name is Reynolds Kamakawi Ole. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of his last name. Hawaiian is next to impossible for a gringo like me to get right, I'm sure. But he's wearing this like red ceremonial suit, and he's closing this circle of people, and there were 12. So when I entered the circle, it was 13, which ultimately would be significant. And so at one point during the ceremony, he said, "May the wind blow to confirm the power of our prayers." And at that moment, the wind blew so hard that gravel blew across the parking lot. Little gravel, but still, the wind blew hard right at that moment. And so that was just one of several experiences along those lines that I would have with these people that weekend. Um, and so, of course, it got my attention. I thought, can you be a fraud or a fake and command the wind? I mean, maybe, but it definitely bought them some credibility in my mind. And so, long story long, the basic message of these people that had gathered there, Golden Light Eagle and Mayan descendants and Incan and people from all over the world, that these ancient people and indigenous people from all around the world had been in contact with what Golden Light Eagle called the Star Tribes for millennia. And they told us that many of us are actually in telepathic communication with these Star Tribe entities, I guess. And oftentimes we don't even realize it, that the revelations that we have, inventions that come through humanity, and this sort of thing are not necessarily even our own thoughts, and we don't even realize it. Um, Now we're entering into that murky territory where I'm kind of going, okay, well, there's some pretty obvious flaws with this idea. We're talking about extraterrestrials, but we're talking about them as if they're like the holy guardian angels of humanity, as if these advanced races have nothing to do but sit around and guide humanity. We're making that the same error that the Christian Church did back in the day of placing humanity at the center of the universe and making the story all about us. And that seems a little bit implausible to me. Why would that be the case? But I have to admit that at no time did they actually specify that these Star Tribe entities were flesh and bone creatures. That was never explicitly stated. So, and the experience that I would have shortly after this meeting with these Native American elders um, seemed to confirm that these beings might not necessarily physically be here. Um, which again, it brings up another sort of point of conflict with this narrative of UFOs, because if we have these star beings that are maybe, they're sending their consciousness around in a sort of immaterial body of light, the Merkaba, that the Old Testament talks about. I read that the Zulu actually also have the word Merkaba, and that it means the same thing, chariot of light. The Merkaba, if you're not familiar in Hebrew, is the chariot that is made of wheels with eyes all over, and the beings have like the head of an eagle, a lion, a man, and maybe a fourth head. I can't really recall. um, and it descends down in this chariot of light. And if you follow my channel or you study mysticism, or really certain types of mysticism, different strains, the connection between light and consciousness is something that is pretty ubiquitous, I think. And this idea that this chariot of light is made of eyes sort of suggests to me that it's really just talking about how this is a immaterial manifestation of consciousness, right? I mean, of course that's conjecture, but it seems to very strongly suggest that. Um, but the point is, if that's the case, then well, what are the UFOs about? Are there different races of aliens here? Some of them are corporeal and require ships to get around. Um, Another great question to ask about that is, why do we assume that these unidentified aerial phenomena, to use the current vernacular, are of an extraterrestrial origin, and not just super advanced Chinese technology, or something to that effect? Um, where is this? I'm sorry, I haven't been watching the chat. I'm trying to catch up. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back here and kind of try to catch up with you guys, because I see I'm missing a lot of potentially interesting questions here. Um, yep, DMT in contact with aliens. And that's another reason I hesitate to talk about this stuff, because I know the importance of rehabilitating psychedelics in the minds of the masses. So when you get on the internet, talking about ayahuasca and having telepathic communication with extraterrestrials, I can see why people in the movement that are trying to encourage mass adoption of psychedelics probably wouldn't necessarily appreciate this live stream. Um, but at the same time, Sonny, I would have to say that I think that the idea that once you expand the parameters of your consciousness, your experience is going to change as well. And I think that is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to process. And I think that it's it's really important that we do talk about these experiences that are sort of outside of the spectrum of what the spectrum of the normal, I guess. And I think it's about time that we just accept that psychedelics do not make you insane. They do not make you delusional unless you are predisposed to mental illness. And that, if there are light beings here on Earth, or if the universal mind is capable of creating projections, as Terence McKenna believed the UFO and alien experience was really, that's what it really was to him. It was just the collective mind trying to find a sort of dramatic way to communicate. Or if there, I think that it's even possible for us to sort of perceptions, because we have limited what we will allow into our reality. You know what I mean? So um, I do hesitate to speak about DMT and actual aliens in the same breath, but I think that we should just go ahead and do it, because um, truth is stranger than fiction, I guess. Uh, you're demonetized anyways. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. What harm is it going to do? So where were we? Um, I guess where we left the story off, I was in New Mexico, and I had met with Golden Light Eagle and those folks. And oh yeah, we were talking about how, there's a lot of things that are difficult to reconcile, I guess, around this subject. If they're not here physically, then what are the ships doing? You know, how do we answer the questions? I don't know. I have a feeling we're about to find out, though. So, um, I guess a couple of weeks after we got back to Colorado from New Mexico, uh, I was driving home with my girlfriend, and I had just taken initiation in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Stella Matutina, the Order of the Morning Star, the same lineage that Aleister Crowley belonged to and Israel Regardie. So, it was not one of these like online wannabe Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, like David Griffin's order. It was that original lineage, and Robert, who was the head of the order, he's probably still the head of the order, called me, and he said, contact is imminent. And so I just assumed that he meant for the entire planet, not necessarily for me personally. Um, so at the time, I was living in a large adobe house with half of it was glass. So it was like a glass front door. The kitchen was glass. The whole front and one side of the house was glass. So we get out of the car, go in the house. I close the door, and I see this like gray sort of translucent. I could see through it. So I wasn't really even 100% confident that I'd really seen it. But it scurried past the door. And as soon as I had time to doubt myself, to kind of get my perceptions in check, I guess, my girlfriend from behind me said, "Oh my God, did you see that?" And I'd been through a lot at this point, suffice it to say. There had been a lot of strange happenings. The Star Tribe meeting. I only shared a little bit of the stuff that went down there. I had been in the Twilight Zone plenty, and I was kind of over it. I just really didn't want anything to do with any more weird shit. So I went back into my bedroom, and I had a pit bull named Diesel at the time, and he jumped up on the bed, and the door opened, and I heard this like pitter patter of tiny feet, and it sounded like they were moving 100 miles an hour across the living room, zipping around the house. There was a crackling sound, and this sort of translucent blue web of energy that was sort of all throughout the house. And my dog, who never did this before or after, suddenly rolled his eyes up in his head and just kind of fell over sideways, snoring. And, when I was younger, I used to fight a lot, and I knocked a couple people out. And it was exactly like that. Like if you hit somebody right on that button, their eyes roll up in their head and they snore really loud, and it's like really dramatic. And so it occurred to me that they had just turned my dog off. Um, Again, if they're not there physically, why would that be necessary? I don't have an answer for that, but this is what happened. And my girlfriend said, "We should go out and see them. I want to meet them. Let's go talk to them." And I was like, no, I'm going to sleep. And I honestly cannot begin to tell you how I did this, but I pulled the blankets up over my head and I went to sleep. And I thought that I would wake up and it would be over and I would go back to normal life. And that's not even close to what happened. The next day was 100% confirmation from all directions that there had been some sort of mass contact experience in Durango, Colorado, in June of 2011. Every single person that I ran into the next day, every single person, before I said anything to them, described seeing the same beings, uh, the same night in the same town. And none of these people were connected to each other, except that they all knew me, right? They didn't know each other. So the possibility that any of them had communicated or something is pretty much zero. So tell you how that happened. I I was playing in a band with a guy, and I drove out to his house, and we had rehearsal. And more alien weirdness, though. That was the one person that didn't mention having seen them the night before, actually. So I guess everybody but that guy. But he still told an alien story without provocation that day. He built amplifiers, custom amplifiers, circuit board, the whole thing. And so I asked him how he learned to do that while I was over at his house, and he said, I said, did you read about it? Did you teach yourself? And he said, no, I'm so dyslexic I can't read. And I said, you can't read? What do you mean? And he said, no, I can't read. When I was 9 years old, I was abducted by aliens, and they sort of downloaded into my consciousness how their ships work and all of this stuff. And he starts explaining how the ships work. And he said that there were these magnets that are like reverse polarity, and they sort of sit in this cavity and like turn, and that's how the ship moves. I mean, you had to be there. I could not begin to recreate this. And then he pulled up his pants, and he had three perfectly semi-spherical scoops that had been taken in a perfect triangle. Looks just like the Tetractys, the Pythagorean, the dots in the triangle that the Masons, that shape in these scoops that he said the aliens had taken out of his ankle. So I had just been through this experience with these beings at my house the night before. I go to band practice, and this guy says this stuff to me. And then I drive to town, and Robert from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn calls me again, and he says, I need you to do something. You need to get to a computer. And, it was 2011. I didn't have a smartphone, and, I didn't even own a laptop at the time, honestly. So I remembered that my old sort of like retired Mexican gangbanger buddy, he was a bandito, which is kind of like the Hells Angels of Mexico. Um, he was out of that now. He was just like this nice old man that I knew at this point. But that was his past. So I went over to his house to see if I knew he had just gotten his brand new computer, and I was right there. So I just stopped and said, hey, Joe, can I use your computer? And he's sitting on the porch looking really distressed. And so I was like, what's wrong, Joe? And he said, I went over to my brother's house yesterday, and as I was walking up to the porch, I noticed that he was crying, that was really upset. And I asked him, what's wrong? And he said that his brother, I was a medical marijuana provider at the time, and his brother was a patient of mine that had both AIDS and cancer. Unfortunately, he's passed. But I was able to actually cross-reference this story later, which is right. So he said his brother was really upset, and he pointed to the roof, and he said that he saw this like gray being with big black eyes, and he threw a rock at it, and the rock just vanished, like it went into another dimension. Those are his words. So I went and used his computer, which is a whole another crazy story for another time. It's not really related to the aliens. But then I had to go home, and I stopped by the business I had been working for. When they'd laid me off a couple of weeks before, but my friend, who was also the singer in another band I was in, still worked there, and I needed to talk to him. So I stopped by there, and I went and found him in the back cutting glass, and he's like, man, Topher, who was our sound man at the time and worked at the print shop behind the glass shop where we worked, he said Topher came over, and he had let him borrow the tool CD. Has contact with aliens, which song actually is 11 minutes and 11 seconds long, which was a big part of Golden Light Eagle's message, 1111, that whole thing. When I discovered that, man, my head almost exploded. But we're going to get to that story as well. But let's get through this one. So he said that Topher had come over and said that he had the headphones on, and he went into his bathroom and he felt something touch his arm. So he looked over, and there was a little gray guy with this looking back at him, and he was no longer in his bathroom. And then he sort of came to later, and he was in the bathroom. And my friend, the singer in my band, said that Topher was like shaking, telling him the story. Uh, so 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 then I go home to my house, and my friend was a pot grower, and I was a medical marijuana provider, so he was one of my suppliers, and I needed to pay him, so he came over and he brought his son, who was I think 9 years old at the time, and I hear the doorbell ring, and I go and open it, and the first thing he says to me is, "Man, you're not going to believe what happened last night." And of course, I'm already thinking, "I bet you I will." And he says, I saw we were out in the driveway around dusk, and which is the same. It was the same time, all of us. uh, and he says, I saw this like little gray guy, maybe 4 feet tall, go running into the park garden. His son's like, I saw it too. So that is my contact story. That is the one time that I actually saw beings that appeared to be non-human. And what is that? One, two, three, four other, well, including my girlfriend, five people also saw those beings in that town that night. Um, which album and song? It's 10,000 Days. Oh, it's the one where he's smoking DMT, and then the cigar shaped vessel lands next to his. He's sitting outside of Area 51 smoking DMT, and he has contact with aliens. Um, and there's a number of similarities in the story that's told in that song to what happened to me that I noticed while it was happening, particularly when I was at the meeting in New Mexico with Golden Light Eagle and the rest of that crew. And it wasn't until like a year later that I happened to look at the back of that, noticed that song is 11 minutes and 11 seconds long, which was the other part of Golden Light Eagle's message. It was like about 1111 and these Star Tribe beings. So that was just, man. And then, so notice also that these aliens were introduced by Native Americans. The song is a Native American chant. So on the Tool CD, the aliens are also introduced by Native Americans. So let's go even further back into the story of my alien experiences. And in this case, it was definitely a mushroom trip. But something happened that came up again when we met with the Star Tribe people. So hear me out. This was in like 2000. I was like 20 years old, and I ate an astronomically massive dose of fresh picked psilocybe cubensis. Way, 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 way too much. And I totally blacked out in terms of my consciousness of this world, but I remember everything that happened. I suddenly found myself on this spaceship, and it was crystal clear. It's not like I was like tripping, when you smoke DMT or something, and there's like the geodesic shifting patterns, and there's weird beings everywhere. I was just like, I'm sitting at this table right now, except that I was on a spaceship, and there were these two guys in suits, and I knew I was on a spaceship, and I was like, so why do you guys look like yuppies in business suits? And they said, we can take any form we want, and it's just best that we don't distract you. Don't worry about what we look like right now. But you have all these concerns about the Patriot Act had just been passed, and I was worried the New World Order was coming. This was 20 years ago. Not much has changed, except that it looks like we were right, maybe. Um, and he said, don't worry about it. Just know that there are sort of like intergalactic rules, and that we cannot intervene in the fate of a species or a planet until it is literally like right at the brink of destroying itself. And then at the absolute last moment, we'll come in and straighten it out. And you know, I I woke up in jail because I guess I had wandered up to these cops and I was spewing poetry. Didn't like it, and they tackled me. Um, there was no real charge filed. The judge, when I went to court, was like, "What the hell?" Because the cops didn't know what the hell was going on. But this is where that story takes a turn for the extremely fucking weird. Um, 10 years later, right after the Star Tribe meeting, um, I was driving home from wherever, and a girl that I had met that was associated or affiliated, like officially with Golden Light Eagle, like she was a speaker at this thing or something. Um, she called me and she said, "Hey, I had this dream last night that I was on this spaceship, and these aliens that were dressed in business suits and just looked like yuppies told me that there are like intergalactic rules, and that they cannot intervene in whatever's going on a planet or with a species until they're on the extreme brink of extincting themselves," or exactly the same story that I was told in exactly the same setting. And I mean, it was totally identical. And so after she tells me this, I I just kind of paused for a minute and I said, "So why did you call me?" We didn't talk or anything. It's not like we had been talking, and we never spoke again. I never heard from her again. And when I asked her, she said, "I don't know. Just intuitively, something told." Um, I don't know where you guys lost me. We just have a rough time with in the jungle sometimes. I think it has to do with storms messing with the signal. Um, but yeah, basically what I was saying is that this message that I received, even though the first time it came to me, I was way out there on mushrooms. When I got that call from that girl that had the identical experience in a dream and was just somehow randomly compelled to contact me about it, that had nothing to do with mushrooms. And even very strong indication that we are experiencing that alien intervention right at the moment that we are about to potentially blow ourselves back up into stardust. So, that's really what provoked me to do this live stream tonight, because it just really hit me that 20 years ago, I mean, yeah, it was a mushroom trip, but then 10 years after that, it I got the same message from other people that had had the same experience in the same context with no mushrooms, and the message basically being that they will intervene right at the very last moment. There's one other element to this that I want to share with you guys that is another. another aspect, I guess, of all of this that makes it um, difficult for me to reconcile, I guess, my experiences with, just like making sense of, hear me out. So, um, one of the things that Golden Light Eagle and his associates were telling us is that, some of us were telepathically linked to these star tribe entities, which may or may not be corporal beings. Maybe they're, emanations from the universal mind or whatever they are. And so I was talking about this experience with my then wife, laying out on our deck in California, and suddenly we see this like little point of light, but it would look like a satellite, except that it's not shooting straight across the sky. It's doing these like power slides and loops and circles and all of this craziness. And we started kind of messing with it because I had just been talking about this experience with these Native Americans telling us that some people were telepathically linked to these star tribes. So we started saying stuff to see if it seemed to respond, and it did. So I said, okay, then stop. And it stopped like on a dime. And I noticed instantly that you could not distinguish it from a star once it stopped moving. Um, So, that was a hell of a thing, but not nearly as crazy as what would happen a few weeks later. A few months later, actually, I was playing with this woman. She was our drummer, and we were working together at a pot farm. And we were walking down the driveway to our cars one day, and we got into this story of this subject. And I started telling her the story of what happened with my ex-wife, with this thing that stopped when I said, okay, well, if you're really connected to us right now, then stop. And it stopped, right? I was telling her this and describing this little point of light. And as I'm talking, we had stopped. I see her eyes just widen like dinner plates. And I knew that I was going to turn around and look up, and there was going to be one of these little points of light power sliding and doing these weird figure eight motions, and exactly as I had described. So the last thing that I had said before her eyes got wide is sometimes when I talk about them, they'll actually show up. So a couple of years after that, um, I was on YouTube and I found this video of this guy, this African American man, that had called the local news station, and um, he told them that he could telepathically summon these UFOs. And for whatever reason, they humored him, and they sent a camera out and a guy, and they're like, laughing at him, kind of making fun of him. And the thing shows up, and it's exactly as I described. It's exactly the same as the one that I experienced that seemed to be connected to my thoughts as well. And yeah, the mistake that guy made, though, is that he then thought he was a prophet and he took it really personally. But I mentioned that video live stream a little while ago, and then I went looking for it and I couldn't find it. I found it again the other day. I was scrolling through TikTok, and this time I was smart enough to save the link. So maybe I'll post that in my subscriber area later. So, I almost wanted to just jump on here and tell these stories just so that uh, I could say I told you so in a couple of months when this alien intervention actually goes down. Yeah, Mr. Charles, I'm pretty sure that was me. DMT Turner, or DM Turner. I don't think that DMT elves are evil. Um, the way that I think about that is that they are like the trickster archetype. It's not evil. They're just, they're trying to loosen you up, trying to tell you not to take yourself so seriously. Um, and it sounds like that that's a message that you might could use based on some of these comments I've seen. Um, that the whole thing about how the Tool song is specifically about you, you might want to reflect on that a little bit, because there are a lot of people out there that think that, um, and it's could be true, but if it is, it's true for all of those people and not for any individual person. So we want to watch out with that kind of thinking. Um, so yeah, I mean that's basically it, I guess. I don't know what to make of it exactly. I think it's just like, when I talk about spirits on this channel, and I say that I think that we should just keep kind of an open-ended perspective on that sort of thing, in the interest of our own mental health. It's just healthy not to believe anything absolutely. Um, but I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He's a normal, straight scientist. And I saw a little clip of him a few days ago where they asked him if he thought that we were alone in the universe. And his answer was about as close to "Are you stupid?" as he would ever utter. It it's just absolutely absurd. And you know, if we look at how mildly over the last 50 years, the last 75 years, um, if you extend that out years, much less 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 years, not to mention if there is a correlative development with consciousness, which I think it could totally be. Um, it makes sense that it should be, if especially if the race, I guess, the alien race is had a healthier relationship with technology than humans do. Most humans, anyways. There should be a correlation between the development of technology and the development of or consciousness. They should catalyze each other. This is what, a lot of the progenitors of the psychedelic movement were really hoping and expecting. Timothy Leary and Terrence McKenna and Robert Anton Wilson, all those folks, they were really positive and hopeful that the advent of the internet and the development of really advanced technologies would allow us to expand our consciousness much more rapidly, much more efficiently. And it's really unfortunate that there are certain influences in this world that sort of seek to dissuade us from engaging with these tools in ways that would yield those results. But just because we're not doing it doesn't mean that it didn't happen on other planets. So, 100,000 years in their development of their consciousness and their technology, I don't know that it's possible for us to conceive of what a race of beings and their technology would be like. If we even look at artificial intelligence and how going, it is going to be able to take over and create itself um, exponentially more and more and more rapidly. I was thinking today about how that's probably a reflection of what happened with organic consciousness when it first came into existence in the universe in a very simple form. But then once it got moving, it just, exponentially developed in terms of its complexity and sophistication. And it will continue to do so if we will get out of the way, or if the influences that seek to keep humanity under control, if we can find a way over, under, or around them, through them, if we have to. Uh, I think that we will accept ourselves. And I also think it's worth considering that if there is no alien intervention on the current trajectory, we are almost assured that we are going to be destroyed. The World War III situation that's brewing. I really think that without some sort of, you know, intervention on that scale, something like a benign race of extraterrestrials intervening in our political affairs, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, in my humble opinion, uh, the conflict between China and Russia and the United States is something that has been carefully engineered to come to a head over decades and decades and decades. I mean, it's so painfully obvious that I can't imagine anyone actually denying it with a straight face at this point. And the only thing that will stop them is something that is so far beyond their capacity that it's more powerful than they are. And according to them, that thing is here. That thing is here. I don't know if I even finished my thought earlier about the chief of the Space Force. Um, I don't even know what that is. I think it's it's government agency of some kind. Uh, warning Congress that this is a threat, not just to United States national security, but to humanity in general. You know, we have U.S. government officials warning Congress that there is some kind of technology that is so advanced all over this planet, right? Like not just like we saw it once, but at this point they're saying, it's routine that radars are picking stuff up and that things are flying out of the ocean that are maneuvering in ways that make no sense, that we can't even comprehend how it could possibly happen. Um, that the governments have basically declared that we are at the mercy of something more advanced than ourselves on this planet. And I saw a video today, or maybe last night, of a chicken being attacked by a hawk, and a goat ran over and kicked the shit out of the hawk until it flew away and saved the chicken. Society, it's totally acceptable for humans to look the other way while something terrible is happening to another human. So I don't think the fact that these races of intelligence, or these alien beings, if that's what they are more advanced than us, means that they're benign and that they're here to help. In fact, if they're here, if you're just looking at it in pragmatic terms, chances are nearly 100% that they're here out of desperation. They're here because they have to come here, not because they want to help us. Um, and, as I was saying, I don't think the fact that they're more advanced is any indication that they're going to be nice, because have more compassion than a lot of humans. So, realistically, it may not be a light beckoning from the future. that these beings are going to intervene. But that's the story that I received in my visions. That's a story I've heard from other people that had the same vision to the point where it's a little bit weird. This is the message of Golden Light Eagle and these Native Americans we met with, and I sure hope they're right, because um, short of that, I don't really see what could happen at this point to diffuse Armageddon. I really don't. So um, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please do hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, because we're demonetized, and without your support, we don't have any support. Um, and I hope that each and every one of you is telepathically linked to a benevolent member of an infinitely enlightened race that is just waiting in the sky to come down and liberate us from the fuck sticks that are in charge down here, because we could be doing a lot better. And I don't know about you, but I'm fucking sick of it. So thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.